It all started with a small incident on a Friday afternoon. My 6-year-old daughter Evie, who's in first grade, usually gets dropped off after school by a friend's mom who lives nearby. That day, instead of pulling into our driveway, the mom stopped at the side of the road and let Evie out. Excited to see me, Evie dashed across the street without looking both ways, as she was taught. I called emergency immediately. Within minutes, both an ambulance and the police arrived. My wife, whom I've been married to for 7 years, was working her regular shift at the nursing home. The nursing home policy required staff to lock their cell phones in assigned lockers during work hours. I called the nursing home on my way to the hospital to inform my wife about the accident. That's when I found out that due to unexpected slowdowns at the nursing home, all full-time staff had to use some of their accumulated time-off hours to avoid layoffs. My wife had decided to use hers that day. The issue was she left for work in her nurse's uniform, not expecting to be off. I had no idea she had the day off. Normally, if she planned to use her time off, she would discuss it with me first. I started wondering if she took up private work somewhere else to help someone out. All I knew for certain was that the receptionist at the nursing home had lied to me. It was a small thing, but it bothered me a lot. I called my wife's cell phone, but it went to voicemail. That was odd because usually when she wasn't working, she'd answer. Something felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. It was a small thing, but it bothered me. I left a detailed message explaining what was happening. I had filled out all of our daughter Emma's paperwork, but still hadn't heard from my wife. The emergency doctor had sent Emma for x-rays and an MRI because she wasn't waking up, and they were concerned she might be in a coma. I was really starting to worry. Finally, about an hour after her usual work-end time, my wife came home. I noticed the scent of fresh soap on her, the kind she usually had after her morning shower. Instantly, I sensed something was wrong, but I didn't know what. It was just a small detail, but there were too many of them adding up. I now knew something was amiss, but I couldn't figure out what. When I asked Emma if the receptionist had passed on my message, she said she got it later. She explained she was busy with a patient who needed to be transferred, and I was in Southeast while she was at St. Francis. I suspected she was lying, but I didn't press it. This wasn't the time or place. 2 women had lied to me that day, and I knew I needed to find out why. What had started as a normal day had turned into a series of lies and inconsistencies between us. The only thing I knew for sure was that my wife wasn't acting like herself. After Emma started to wake up from the tests, the doctors decided to keep her overnight for observation due to how long she had been unconscious. Around 10 p.m., after she fell asleep, we headed home, stopping at Taco Bell's drive-thru for dinner. After eating and having a cold beer, we went to bed. That Saturday, our little girl was given the all-clear to come home. We were fortunate there was no serious harm. When we arrived at the hospital, our family doctor, Dr. Ronald Foster, was there examining her. I was impressed by how seriously he took his job. Before we left, he told us to call his office and schedule a follow-up appointment in 3 weeks. He explained that sometimes there could be issues that arise later related to the accident, and without follow-up, we might never know. He emphasized the importance of being cautious, especially with young children. Once we were back home and settled, I asked Emma again about her Friday. Her answer didn't satisfy me. Normally, she'd share if anything interesting happened at work or if they had a new patient transferred in. These little pieces of everyday communication were missing. It was a small thing, but these details were starting to add up, forming a pattern. Whatever my wife had been up to on Friday, it was clear she didn't want me to know. I began to wonder why. I started thinking back over the past few weeks to see if I had done something to upset her. Emma had a tendency to hold on to grudges if she felt unfairly treated, even for weeks. Emma and I were high school sweethearts. From the moment I first met her in junior high, I never looked at anyone else. Though we broke up 3 or 4 times, we always found our way back to each other. Emma had a habit of being drawn to something new and diving in to explore what intrigued her, which often led to our breakups. I thought it was just part of growing up and assumed it was a phase she'd outgrow. Each breakup stemmed from her developing an interest in someone or something else. I was on the Jackson High School football team, and she was a cheerleader. We were both popular students, and everyone thought we were meant to be together. But we ended things senior year because I didn't see our future together. After high school, I joined the fire department and worked my way up while she pursued her LPN certification on her path to becoming a registered nurse. I reconnected with Emma because I got injured fighting a fire on the job. 6 months later, we got married. Our daughter was 2 years old when Emma became a registered nurse. Emma had dark shoulder-length black hair, blue eyes, and an attractive figure. Most people who knew her loved her for her caring personality. What puzzled me was that in all our years of marriage, we never had any serious conflicts or problems. Recently, we had even been discussing expanding our family. On Sunday, we were invited to an afternoon barbecue with our daughter at a coworker's poolside. We got ready by wearing our swimsuits under our clothes. Each of us was assigned something to bring. On the way, I stopped at the grocery store to pick up the items we decided on, enough premium franks and buns for about 16 people. These franks were special. Always boiled before grilling, they retained moisture and had a rich, satisfying flavor. I discovered them by accident, and now they were the only ones I liked. I called them Smokies because of their distinctive flavor. It turned out that my preparation method made them a hit, and we always ended up with more meat than bread. That Sunday, no one noticed me in the kitchen, carefully boiling the franks until they plumped up, then drying them off before grilling. Meanwhile, Emma was outside chatting with our host, Olivia, who was head of the HR department where they both worked. They were watching our daughter and Olivia's son playing by the pool with a few other kids. I wasn't paying much attention to their conversation until the end, when I overheard something that deeply hurt me. It shook me to my core, revealing clearly what was going on. Dr. Ronald Foster, the very popular doctor who used to visit every Friday afternoon to check on his nursing home patients, Olivia explained. Now he only comes when you're on duty. It's making some of us wonder if there's something more between you two. Is there something I should know? No, not really, my wife replied, looking flushed and clearly avoiding the topic. Her expression usually meant she was caught doing something she didn't want to explain. Now I knew two people whose Friday routines had suddenly changed. Emma had a good reason to keep whatever she was hiding a secret, which wasn't like her. We're just professional friends, Emma tried to clarify to Olivia unsuccessfully. He appreciates the detailed reports I send him about his Alzheimer's patients' behaviors. It helps him manage their medical needs. Well, that's not what people are saying in the halls, Olivia retorted. Whatever is going on, it better stay strictly professional at work. Otherwise, these rumors will only get worse. I'll talk to him about it next time I see him. I have another appointment with him next week, Emma said. I should go check on Evie. As Emma walked away to check on our daughter in the pool, I muttered under my breath, she's lying. She doesn't have a doctor's appointment next week. Olivia heard me and turned, seeing the shock on my face. Her expression turned serious as she realized, like I did, that something was definitely going on that I hadn't known about until today. You heard us, didn't you, Damon? Olivia said. I simply nodded. You think there's something going on between them, don't you? Over the past few days, I've noticed a few small inconsistencies. Now, with what I just witnessed and heard, it's painting a very different picture. Her facial expressions clearly showed she's hiding something she doesn't want anyone to know about. It's made me reconsider everything. Can you please tell me how long Emma has been taking every other Friday off? I asked. For the last 3 months. She proposed the new schedule since she works a lot of extra hours. Most of her overtime pay goes towards additional taxes, she says. Taking the day off helps reduce her overtime hours, and she saves her accumulated time off for family matters, Olivia explained. We in human resources like it because, in the long run, it saves the company money and gives part-time employees more hours. Another question, how close is Emma to the receptionist who answers the phone? I inquired. They're best friends. Why? Olivia replied. When I called about Evie's accident on Friday, the receptionist told me Emma was taking accumulated permanent time off because it was slow, and management had asked all full-timers to do so to avoid laying off part-time staff. You were lied to. We're operating at full capacity. There's no need for cuts. What are you going to do? Olivia said as she poured me a strong drink. Emma is definitely hiding something, and her best friend seems to be helping her, apparently for a while. I hope what I suspect isn't true, I said. Dr. Foster is our family doctor. If my gut feeling is right, I'll ruin his career, divorce my wife, and seek sole custody of our daughter. Well, according to the rumors going around, you're not the only one who suspects something, Olivia said. The nurses she works with feel they're too friendly with each other for it to be purely professional. They spend a lot of time in a patient's room with the unit door closed. If I hear more, I'll let you know. Please do. As a firefighter, we always say where there's smoke, there's fire. It might be just a mutual attraction that went too far. Either way, I'm going to find out, I said, drying off the Smokies. Nice try, but I don't think that's going to work, Olivia said. I've been in similar situations, and when our instincts tell us something, they're usually right. At that moment, I started to believe I was witnessing the same behavior from Emma that I had seen in high school. If that were true, it could only mean one thing. Emma had found someone new. Dr. Ronald Foster joined the partnership group 3 years ago to take over our former family doctor's practice. The local hospital, due to his age, had been making things difficult for him, and his partners essentially forced him into retirement. Emma, a registered nurse, had obtained her license while working at Southeast Hospital before moving to the nursing home. Southeast Hospital, a teaching hospital, favored a younger image. If our former doctor wasn't willing to change his appearance, it was time for him to leave. It's unfortunate when medical organizations prioritize appearance over experience. For the next 6 weeks, I would be on the evening shift, working from 6 to 6, 4 days on and 4 days off. It was the perfect opportunity for them to do whatever they wanted without being caught, given my work schedule. My wife's recent behavior had created enough doubt that I took a step I never thought I would. Before putting the sausages on the grill, I texted one of my regular crew members, asking him to call me in 5 minutes. I was next to my wife when he called. Before answering, I told her I needed privacy for a work-related call and moved to the front yard. Truthfully, I did it because I didn't want Emma to overhear the conversation. "Bob, remember the team we assembled when Glenn needed help with his ex-wife a couple of years ago?" I asked. "Of course, Dahman. It worked well and didn't take long," Bob replied. "Who needs our help this time?" "I do. Based on what I found out, I think it's been happening for at least the past 3 months. Emma and the man I suspect she's involved with is Dr. Ronald Foster," I explained. "Even her colleagues at the nursing home suspect something. I overheard management discussing it with her, which suggests it's serious. The head of human resources even warned Emma to be more discreet at work." "Ouch. If they're saying that, it's been going on a while. I'll start making calls to arrange for us to meet at the fire hall tomorrow when we're on duty," Bob replied. "Our sheriff department friends will be happy for something different to do. Remember, Damon, we need to impose the same rules on you as we did with Glenn. When we helped Glenn before, our rule was he had to stay out of it until our team finished our investigation. We thought any changes in his behavior might tip off his spouse. It took less than a month to get everything done. We compiled a detailed daily report of his ex-wife's activities with her lover. His lawyer said it was so thorough that nothing could slip through. Glenn easily won custody of their 3 kids in the divorce. We met Monday evening after dinner in the fire hall meeting room. 6 sheriff's deputies, 5 firefighters, and 2 police officers were there. I briefed them on what happened Friday and what I'd discovered since then. Everyone agreed it seemed like something was definitely going on. I gave them Emma's car description, license plate number, and her regular work hours, from 7 in the morning to 3:30 in the afternoon. They asked me to get copies of our medical records from our files at home for the last 2 years. They wanted to check if Dr. Ronald Foster was still our family doctor by looking at the medical billing records. If he and Emma were romantically involved, he should have transferred us to another doctor in their practice. After that, they asked me to step out so they could plan who would do what and when. On Tuesday morning, after I saw my daughter off to the bus, I noticed my retired neighbor fetching his morning newspaper. I walked over to say hi and we started chatting. He asked why the doctor had visited us the previous night. I asked if he was sure it was a doctor. He said the person was wearing a white coat when he arrived, and he saw him take it off and leave it in the car before going to our door. He mentioned the doctor was still at our house when he went to bed around 10. I said I hoped it wasn't anything serious. He suggested I ask my wife about it when she got home. Walking back home, I realized my suspicions were correct. I grabbed my phone, returned to my neighbor, and showed him a picture of Dr. Ronald Foster from the medical group's Facebook page. He confirmed that was the doctor he had seen. Emma called and said she would be late. I took Evie to my mother's so I could get to work on time. I informed Bob about what the neighbor had witnessed and gave him copies of our medical records and health insurance reports. They proved Dr. Ronald Foster was still our family doctor, with my wife's last appointment being 2 weeks ago. The following Tuesday, a few friends came over while Emma was at work and did some work inside the house. I wasn't allowed inside until they finished, so I sat and talked with my next-door neighbor. He mentioned the doctor's visit the previous week wasn't medical. I agreed, saying my friends were wiring the house, but I wasn't involved in that part. They set it up this way so I wouldn't know where things were. If I had known their plans, like anyone else, I'd be watching closely to see if they were working, and my behavior might have given it away. "I wish I had friends like yours when I got divorced years ago," my neighbor said. "It might have saved me thousands in legal fees alone. Nowadays, you've got to protect yourself from everyone, even those you trust. It's sad how this new computer age has helped erode what little family values we had." It was during the first day of my last 4-day shift to end the 6 weeks of night shifts when they showed up at the firehouse to deliver the bad news. They even brought one of the top divorce lawyers from our town with them. I immediately knew my situation was more serious than just my wife cheating. Their choice of lawyer meant the team believed we needed to act quickly. Emma and Ronald Foster were having an affair that had been going on for over 6 months and was nearing a breaking point. They felt it was time for me to take decisive action. Emma planned to wait until the end of the school year, just 2 months away, before filing for divorce. On the nights I was working, they were either at my house after Evie went to bed, or Emma would take our daughter to her sister's place for babysitting. Emma would pick up Evie from Ronald's house in the morning and bring her home before I finished work. Then they would go about their day as usual. The reason the lawyer was present was because of what they were plotting behind my back. With Dr. Ronald Foster's assistance, Emma intended to use claims of mental cruelty against me. They aimed to prove I was an unfit father and a danger to our daughter's well-being. Emma, relying on her professional background, thought that the fabricated accusations, supported by a detailed medical record they were compiling, would convince the court to grant her full custody of our daughter. She aimed to reduce my interactions with Evie to supervised visits only. Her ultimate aim was to provoke such anger in me and my parents that we would choose to permanently cut ties with them. As I sat there listening to their plans, I couldn't help but wonder what I had done to my soon-to-be ex-wife to make her so malicious and vengeful. The extensive report spanned 60 pages and included dates, explicit photographs of the two engaged intimately, several notarized statements affirming their 6-month relationship, and transcripts of their conversations plotting how they could harm me. Our ace in the hole appeared to be a very graphic picture of our 6-year-old daughter standing at the foot of our master bed watching the two of them doing that, with both of them lying completely oblivious to the fact that Evie was there. I decided to have her served after my last night shift later this week. After that, we'll file a complaint with the state medical board against Dr. Ronald Foster on the same day. We'll provide evidence from our billing records showing he was still acting as our family doctor during that time. We'll question whether he falsified medical records to support my soon-to-be ex-wife's claims of mental cruelty, especially since they discussed setting me up. It was also proven with a photograph that he was having an affair with my wife in front of our 6-year-old daughter. Dr. Ronald Foster, a respected man, violated medical ethics and broke the law by falsifying medical records. A copy of the divorce petition will be given to our local child services, along with an explanation that I'm taking my daughter out of town to allow them to investigate my wife and me without my interference. A letter will explain this as a precautionary measure. The state's child services take crimes against children by family members very seriously. All 3 agencies will receive an 8x10 photograph showing my daughter witnessing the affair. I'm taking 3 weeks vacation starting right after this week's shift's end. It's already approved. One of the fire department heads, a colleague, was present when I called my retired parents and suggested we use Dad's RV for a 3-week vacation starting the day after my last shift. I said I needed their help and would cover the costs. They agreed but asked why it had to be rushed. I promised to explain on the way. My new lawyer was shocked when I proposed signing over my parental rights to my parents until the divorce is finalized. He agreed it's a smart move given the circumstances. If Emma has already reported to child services, it shows my top priority is my daughter's well-being. Until my name is cleared, it demonstrates to everyone, including legal authorities, that I'm protecting my daughter first. I'll prepare the paperwork, he said, but make sure to have it notarized within 24 hours of serving your wife. I just finished my final evening shift and made it home in time to see my wife off to work. As usual, she kissed me on the cheek before leaving. Once she drove away, I quickly made a phone call. Evie and I started packing for a surprise trip. I asked a sheriff's department representative to inform the school principal about our situation and why I had to take our 6-year-old daughter out of school. At 8 o'clock that morning, my parents arrived. We loaded our belongings into their RV, and by 9 o'clock, we were on the road. Out of courtesy, I called Olivia to update her. She mentioned that since her conversation with Emma at the nursing home, everything had been strictly professional, and the rumors were fading. I explained that I now had proof of their affair spanning at least 6 months. Consequently, I planned to have legal papers served to Emma at her workplace later that day. Olivia agreed to witness it and keep me informed. Afterward, I joined my daughter in my parents' large RV. As we left town, I handed my mother a legal envelope containing all the details, asking her to read it. My dad asked, "What's going on?" "I recently found out Emma was planning to divorce me at the end of the school year," I said. "What Mom is reading outlines what we've discovered and proven. Her lover is our family doctor, and they were plotting against me. If they hadn't been caught, they could have arranged things so I'd never see Evie again after the legal battles." "So, we're leaving town because things are about to get very messy for a few people," my dad said. "It's best for you and our granddaughter to be away from it all." "Basically, Emma will be served at work today. The state medical board will receive an official complaint this morning about Dr. Ronald's relationship with his patient, my wife. I'm alleging ethics violations and have some compelling evidence. Child Services will also be informed about everything Mom's reading. He could lose his license to practice for at least a year or more if he's found guilty. Your claim could trigger a deep investigation into every doctor in his group," Dad explained. "Oh my God!" Mom exclaimed. "They let my granddaughter see them doing that. I'll take care of that woman myself." "That doctor can say goodbye to his career. He'll lose his license for good. The whole partnership he's in will be scrutinized by every government agency," Dad continued. "They've made a mess of things. Emma will be lucky to get supervised visits." "Damon Lee, you and Evie will come live with us when you return," Mom insisted. "If Emma shows up at my door when your father and you aren't home, I'll answer with a loaded Magnum. I'll be driving Evie to school and picking her up every day." I cherished my mom. She adored her granddaughter more than anything and fiercely protected her family. She'd taken down many who threatened her family over the years. Dad drove until we needed gas, about when the tank was half full. I used my credit card to fill up and took over driving. It gave Dad a chance to read through everything himself. He was amazed at the level of detail. I explained about the group we'd formed within City Services, our second time helping in a divorce case to protect one of our own. Around 3 o'clock, we stopped at a trailer park for the night that Mom had booked. These 3 weeks were meant to spoil her granddaughter. After parking and hooking up the RV, I took Evie swimming in their pond. Just as we returned, my cell phone rang. It was Olivia. "Hi, Olivia," I greeted her. "Hope your day went well." "Damn, we haven't had such an exciting day in months," Olivia replied. "Thanks to you. This afternoon, we got word that Dr. Ronald Foster has been temporarily suspended from practicing until the state medical board finishes their investigation." "They acted quickly. I have to give them credit," I admitted. "I thought they'd at least call him in for an interview first." "They only suspend that fast if there's a serious complaint with some evidence already provided," Olivia clarified. "It shows they're taking this very seriously. We probably won't know the outcome for about 3 months." "Well, I did send them all the information I included in my divorce petition," I explained. "At 3 p.m., your soon-to-be ex was served. Right at shift change, I had security informed to expect him and to notify me before allowing him in. When he arrived, I escorted him to Emma's section. The young man asked her, 'Are you Emma Lee?' When she said yes, he said, 'Congrats, you've been served,'" Olivia recounted. When she opened the legal envelope, the first thing we all saw was the image of Ronald and her making love with Evie watching. "Oh no!" she screamed before fainting. "My lawyer let her see that first. That's priceless," I chuckled. She got what was coming to her. "Did the state get a copy of that picture?" Olivia inquired. "Most likely, knowing my lawyer," I replied honestly. "Then the state had no choice. Dr. Ronald Foster was having an affair with a patient and allowed the patient's minor child to witness it," Olivia analyzed. "I didn't think you could pull it off. Now we're all betting on how long he'll lose his license." "My dad thinks he's lost it for good in our state," I said. "Emma and Ronald were fabricating a false medical history claiming I was mentally cruel to her and our daughter so she could get sole custody. If they can prove that, criminal charges might come into play." "It's a mess, but her problems are piling up since everyone now knows she let her daughter see what she was doing with Ronald," Olivia added. "The rumors are flying around here. Some of the staff refuse to work with her. I'm redoing the schedule as we speak. They say they can't trust her anymore." When she regained her composure, I informed her that the state had notified us about Dr. Ronald Foster's suspension by the medical board pending their investigation. She wasn't happy when she left at 3:30. "Wait until she realizes Evie and I are out of town," I said. "We left this morning with my parents on advice from my lawyer. Given the accusations from both Ronald and Emma, my lawyer thought it best for me not to be alone with my daughter right now." "That's a smart move because of her profession. She has a lot of friends everywhere. To make her claims credible, those stories may already be circulating, Olivia remarked. In the end, it's the thoroughness of our reports that has legally saved our organization more than once. We promised to stay in touch and said goodbye. Mom and Dad looked at me in amazement. It was like they were just realizing for the first time what Emma and Dr. Foster were attempting. Mom, can you find in your notebook the address of the nearest notary for us tomorrow morning? I asked. Why? She asked. The lawyer has prepared legal documents granting you both my parental rights until either the divorce is settled or my name is cleared. We need to have them signed and notarized by 3 p.m. tomorrow, I explained. I won't let them take my daughter away no matter what. My mother, tears in her eyes, said, Are you sure about this? It seems extreme. Yes, Mom, I am. Even the lawyer thinks it's best. We don't know what's in those false medical reports. So, for Evie's safety, this is necessary until it's proven I'm not a danger to her, I reassured her. My mother started to cry. Emma Lee returned home to find her husband's car in the driveway. She turned off her car and braced herself for the confrontation she expected. Walking up, she rang the doorbell, assuming he would answer. When he didn't, she rang it again. Finally, she used her house key to unlock the door. When she walked into the house, Emma noticed it was empty because her daughter didn't come to greet her. She took the legal envelope out of her large bag and read it thoroughly. It was clear that whoever Damon had hired had uncovered everything. The plan, as outlined by transcripts of Ronald's and her own words, had been exposed. Ronald acted first and aggressively. Their problem was that none of the doctored medical records had been made public yet because they hadn't reached that stage of their plan. And now they never would. Ronald couldn't access his files until the investigation concluded. He still hadn't been informed of the specifics of the complaint against him. He was only told that precautionary measures were being taken due to the seriousness of the allegations. Damon had proved the affair and their stupidity. No one with any morals or principles would accept the fact that a 6-year-old had to witness them. Until this moment, she hadn't known that it had occurred. Evie likely woke briefly and then returned to bed. Obtaining sole custody was now impossible, but joint custody with primary care remained a possibility. The crucial step was reaching Damon and speaking with him. Damon was always willing to hear her perspective. She dialed him, but his phone redirected to voicemail. She sent a text, receiving no reply. Trying his parents' home phone, she found they weren't answering. Calls to their cell phones also went unanswered, confirming they had blocked her. She then called her sister, who picked up the phone.
Hi, Emma. Damon was clever. He sent our entire family a copy of his divorce petition, Evelyn said. Mom and Dad are livid. They've read it all and are completely disgusted by your behavior with your lover.
In our parents' eyes, you've gone too far trying to ruin Damon's reputation, her sister continued. He called them this morning right after you left for work to let them know he's taking their granddaughter out of town with his parents. When they asked why, he said, Your daughter and her lover have left me no choice. You'll receive a document explaining everything. Dad, Damon told them, I'm in a legal bind because of Emma, and I have to sign over my parental rights for Evie until I clear my name. Mom and Dad were hysterical when they read it. Why would you try to destroy Damon's life like this? God damn it, Emma muttered. Does this mean I'll have to fight my in-laws for custody? Looks that way, Evelyn confirmed. The divorce court can't decide on what Damon doesn't have. It seems he's outsmarted you. I always thought he was the kindest, most generous man I knew until he was pushed too far. Then he goes all out. You know how Mom feels about her reputation. This is going to be a long, tough battle. I was expecting a fight, but not like this, Emma admitted. I thought I had a winning strategy. We all got what you received, a certified copy of the divorce petition, along with a note saying the same was sent to the state medical board, Evelyn clarified. You and Ronald were trying to ruin him so you could cut Evie out of his life. If you were in his shoes, what would you do? Crap, Emma exclaimed. He's going after Ronald's career and our future. If the board sides with Damon, Ronald may never practice medicine in this state again. Bingo, sis. You've got it figured out, Evelyn said. He's turning the tables, using your own schemes against you to prove his point. But let's face it, Ronald may be your best lay, but the family and I agree. We're staying out of this. We won't support your attempt to ruin your husband's life. Stay away from us until this mess is resolved. Emma was shocked to realize her husband had outsmarted her completely. Even her own family wanted nothing to do with the mess she had created. She and Ronald had believed they were cautious, so being served had come as a total surprise. She spent the entire night trying to unravel how they had been caught. Ronald Foster had just left a tense 4-hour meeting with his partners. They had agreed to buy him out immediately to minimize the impact of the investigation on their limited partnership. Until they identified who made the serious allegations, everyone was operating blindly. Ronald made enough from the deal to start his own practice once things calmed down. Emma's phone buzzed with a text message. She opened it to find a reply from Damon. He expressed he was too angry to talk and any communication must go through their lawyers. Emma broke down in tears, realizing she had lost her chance to persuade him to withdraw his complaint against their doctor. My parents and I had just left the notary after finalizing the transfer of my parental rights to them. It cost me an extra $5 for them to scan and send a copy to my lawyer. Unexpectedly, I received a call from the family doctor's office. The state was there, and they had a court order to obtain medical records, but my name wasn't included. The nurse asked for my permission to release the records related to my family, including my wife's and my billing records. Mom had planned our trip meticulously, ensuring there was something fun for Evie to do every day. It brought back memories of our childhood vacations. We parked early again, and with the humidity bearable, Dad and I were outside grilling supper. Mom called out that Olivia was on my cell. I took the phone from her and answered. "Hi, Olivia," I greeted her. "I'm surprised to hear from you so soon." "It's been quite a day here, thanks to you," Olivia chuckled lightly. Emma was interviewed by state officials this afternoon for about an hour. We used our on-staff notary to record, witness, and verify her statement. "I find that really interesting," I commented. "Is there anything else important I should know?" After the meeting, she mentioned she'd have to face a full review by the nursing board for her behavior, Olivia explained. "She's likely looking at a 6-month probation." "How will this affect her job?" I inquired. "Since what happened didn't occur here, it won't affect her job much," Olivia replied. "I'll just have to keep an eye on her and report anything suspicious. For the next 6 months, Emma will probably submit the best daily reports on our patients in the whole organization. But if she does get probation, we'll assign her to the night shift during that time." I chuckled because Emma disliked night shifts due to their impact on social life. I mentioned that my parents and I were trying to make this time special for Evie. After a brief chat, I promised Olivia dinner once I returned. During supper, my mother asked what I knew about Olivia. I admitted I didn't know much. She's a single mother around my age, with a son slightly older than Evie. I wasn't even sure if she was married. Olivia and I stayed in touch for the remainder of our trip. The day before we returned, I called my lawyer to arrange access to my home so I could collect my belongings. That's when I discovered Emma had moved out, taking what she wanted, and was now living with Ronald. We cut our trip short by a couple of days to get things sorted out, slipping back into Cape on Friday morning. My parents found it amusing and dropped me off at the house early that morning, taking Evie to our new home. First, I mowed the lawn, and a neighbor brought over a cold beer before I finished. He remarked it was a clever move, as news of our marriage breakdown had made the local headlines. I called a locksmith to rekey all the locks. I spent the day cleaning up the mess Emma had left at home. I called my mom to see if there was anything she needed from the house. She said no, just ours and Evie's clothes. The rest would be sold with the house. I gathered up any canned goods and frozen food we had left and dropped it off at the food bank. Then I returned to clean out the fridge. I brought the stuff home, and Mom insisted on washing all the clothes in case something had been done to them. By around 4 p.m., I picked up my phone. Olivia answered right away. "Hey, Damon, you're back," Olivia greeted. "When did you get back?" "This morning. Spent the day cleaning up the house to get it ready for sale," I replied. "I was wondering if you and your son wanted to join me and Emma for dinner. If he was home, we'd love to, but he's with my mom for the weekend." "I'm free, though," Olivia said. "Great. I'll leave Evie with my mom and pick you up at 7. How about Red Lobster or Outback?" I asked. "Red Lobster sounds great," she replied. I dressed up a bit for dinner. Nice shirt, dress pants, and slip-on leather shoes. With our reservation, we were seated promptly. We had a good meal, and I learned more about Olivia. She had never married and was raising her 7-year-old son on her own. Her father had been a firefighter in his time. My first day of work was scheduled for Sunday. No decisions had been made yet by the state about Emma and Ronald. The feeling was, the longer it took, the worse it would be. I shared what we did as a family with Evie over the 3 weeks. Afterward, we strolled through downtown Cape to see the nightlife. Around 11, I arrived back at my parents' place where my mom, being mom, was still up. At work on Sunday afternoon, I was called to the office. There was a visitor waiting to see me. I figured it was who I expected. I was right. It was my soon-to-be ex, Emma Lee. "Mrs. Foster, what can I do for you?" I greeted, turning on the voice recorder app on my cell phone as I walked into the office. "My name is still Lee, Damon," Emma replied. Well, if that's true, then I'm still nothing but garbage to you, I responded. So what do you want? Damon, that's not true, Emma said, trying to calm things down. Sorry, but your actions speak louder than words, don't they? I replied. The first thing you did was move in with someone else as soon as Evie and I went on vacation. Witnesses say you moved in the next day. So much for feeling guilty or remorseful. I want to see Evie, Emma said. Check with your lawyer. I legally have no say in that anymore. Looks like you're knocking on the wrong door, I replied. After all, you publicly accused me of offending our child. I know that, but you can help facilitate it, Emma said. Sorry, I don't think Evie should be around someone who is nothing but a slut, I said. Photos show how much you care about our daughter when you're in another person's arms. Deal with my parents directly. Please leave, Mrs. Foster, and don't come back, or I'll seek a restraining order. With that, I turned away and walked out. I instructed the staff member on duty to escort her out. I turned off the recording app and saved it. Later, he told me her face turned pale and she broke down as he escorted her to her car. I informed her that based on what I had heard, Damon had no choice but to react this way. If she had felt any responsibility over the past 4 weeks, she would have done something to clear his name. Most of us who assisted in the investigation find your behavior unforgivable. You are nothing but a scheming, greedy woman who planned to take everything that mattered to him. I was assisting first responders on a medical call late Monday afternoon when my mother called. I let the call go to voicemail. We were preparing an elderly woman for transport to the hospital. When I returned to the station, I called her back. Sorry, Mom, I was on a call and couldn't answer, I explained. I figured I wanted you to know the state was here shortly after I brought Evie home. They spoke to her directly at school today, she said. They toured the house, inspected her room. I showed them the transfer of parental rights, and we discussed it for a while. I assured them I have never seen my son be offensive to anyone. Thanks, Mom, that's good to know, I said. I hope you're not upset, but Emma's parents are here and staying for dinner, she said. Should we wait for you? That's okay, Mom. Please give them my love and let them know I'll be there as soon as I can, I replied. Tell them they can have Evie whenever they want, as long as Emma isn't around. It has to be that way until everything is settled in court. I ended up working late because one of the guys on the evening shift couldn't make it until 8, so I stayed to cover. I told him he could make up the hours later. I texted my mom not to wait and explained why. I was just heading home in my Ford Escape when Emma's dad called me. Hi, Dad. How was dinner? I asked. It was great. Both my wife and I enjoyed it, Dad said. Damon, my wife and I want to thank you. Gracie told us what you said. We're so sorry for what our daughter has done. We promise to honor your terms. Have you spoken to her at all? We haven't since we received the copy of the divorce petition. She came by the station on Sunday demanding to see Evie. I told her it's out of my hands. She'll have to deal with my mom about that. Oh, and I just remembered I recorded our conversation. How about I text it to you? I said. Please do. I'd like to hear it, Dad replied. So I sent it to him. I guess it went over well because he forwarded it to my parents, all his kids, including Emma, then sent a text back saying, the truth was well explained. It's a good thing I live in a small town because I found out the next day that my wife and I were scheduled to see Judge Donald McDonald on Friday afternoon at 1 o'clock. He's the toughest, most principled judge in the area. In his courtroom, you could say what you wanted, but if you crossed the line, he'd set you straight. It was rumored, but not proven, that some guys never recovered after facing him. He was a legend here. People often said he made Judge Roy Bean look like a pushover. My lawyer warned me that when Judge handles our case, it's going to be more serious than a Friday the 13th movie. You had to be careful and ready to answer his questions promptly or face consequences. The judge doesn't tolerate slander or hints. He wants facts. With this understanding, we prepared our defense. We were all present as the judge took his seat. Emma's lawyer sought visitation rights to see Evie, which required overturning my parental rights surrender. My lawyer argued that I had voluntarily given up parental rights due to accusations by my wife and her partner. Since the State Medical Board and Child Services were still investigating these claims, the issue of whether I was offensive to my daughter remained unresolved. Until this is clarified by the legal system, any time Damon Lee spends alone with his daughter could be seen as potential endangerment. Damon Lee set aside his pride and prioritized his daughter Evie's well-being. He hasn't been alone with her since the accusations surfaced because of the predicament caused by his wife. We presented a recorded conversation as evidence, witnessed by others, where Damon explained that Emma would need to resolve matters with those who held parental rights, his parents. The judge requested to hear the conversation, so my lawyer played it through the courtroom's sound system. Emma wasn't pleased to hear it again. Then, my lawyer submitted a notarized statement from a witness who provided additional context after I had left. The judge asked to see the transfer of parental rights, and my lawyer handed him a copy. A slight smile crossed his face as he read it. Turning to Emma's lawyer, the judge asked, "Is it true that because his soon-to-be ex-wife accused him of mental cruelty and emotional offense, he took the actions he believed necessary?" My wife's attorney explained, "Yes, but she was under significant emotional stress during that period. Now that she's out of the relationship, she's regained her stability." "Is this being investigated as described?" I asked. "Yes, it is, and there hasn't been any ruling or resolution yet," her lawyer replied. "I'll read what the surrender of parental rights states," the judge said. "I voluntarily relinquish my parental rights until government agencies investigating allegations about my parenting decide, or until the court rules based on evidence that I'm not an offender of any kind. Currently, 3 agencies are involved, correct?" "There are 3. The State Medical Board, Child Services, and the State Nursing Board," my lawyer clarified. "Interesting. This is quite a complicated situation. How long have these investigations been ongoing?" Judge McDonald inquired. "About a month," my lawyer answered. "From the duration, it seems this isn't just a typical dispute of conflicting claims, correct?" the judge questioned. "On page 32, the second and third paragraphs of Damon Lee's divorce petition will clarify why these 3 boards are still investigating," my lawyer explained. We all observed as the judge retrieved and read the document. His expression turned serious as he set the paperwork down and glanced at my wife's lawyer. "Let me be clear. The divorce cannot proceed until all 3 investigations are concluded. I won't interfere with investigations that might lead to criminal charges. Based on what I've read, it appears that one party is here due to potential criminal actions by others. I must consider this possibility. It's possible that the accusations against one party by the other are unfounded," Judge Donald McDonald stated. "The surrender of Mr. Damon Lee's parental rights stands. I commend the wisdom he's shown in court by his actions. It takes a special kind of parent to prioritize the child's needs. Mr. Lee did this for both the child's protection and his own. Given the questionable conduct of both biological parents toward their child and the actions of one, he felt it was best to remove himself from the situation. Therefore, until we review the state reports, no final decisions can be made. Mrs. Emma Lee's request for visitation must be pursued against the child's other legal guardian, who is not him. Court is adjourned," the judge concluded. Emma's expression spoke volumes. She clearly didn't accept that my actions had been validated legally. She was furious about losing. As we exited the courtroom, she confronted me. "Damon, how did you figure it out?" Emma demanded. "It was a series of small details that didn't add up, from Evie's accident to the barbecue at Olivia's," I explained. "Remember that Sunday phone call?" "Yes, why?" Emma asked, clearly intrigued. "Just before that call, I noticed your behavior mirrored how you were in high school when you started liking someone else," I recounted. "That call I received was in response to a text I sent minutes earlier. By the time it ended, you were already under investigation." Her face turned pale. She hadn't realized she had inadvertently exposed herself. Until then, she had believed someone had betrayed her secret. "Pay attention to the little things. They reveal the whole story," I said with a grin. "Given your meticulous patient reporting, you should have known that." I didn't need to rub it in, but I couldn't resist. Seeing her even angrier only widened my smile. After court, I slipped into the men's room and ran into Judge McDonald. I thanked him for his ruling. "It was my pleasure," Judge McDonald replied. "Once I reviewed the facts, it became crystal clear." "Did your lawyer suggest you take that step?" "No, it was my decision," I replied. Knowing Emma as well as I do, I realized she would stop at nothing to worsen my situation. I felt cornered, knowing she had connections that could sway the outcome. This was the only way I could protect myself. "If you hadn't acted preemptively, she might have gained visitation and even custody due to the severity of her accusations," the judge acknowledged. "Your preemptive move put a stop to all that. I hope your name is cleared soon." So did I. Saturday night at the fairgrounds, there was a Back to the 60s dance in one of the exhibition buildings. I got a couple of tickets and called Olivia to see if she wanted to join. She said yes, but she had to have dinner with her parents first. She invited me and Evie to join them, and I agreed. It was interesting. It had been a while since I faced an overprotective father. Evie and Olivia's son, Terry, were getting along well. Olivia's father seemed a bit harsh. I think Olivia noticed because I overheard her telling her father to ease off. I know Damon is a good, honest man, she said. How do you know what kind of man he is? He retorted. His ex-wife has accused him of all sorts of things and everyone's whispering about it behind his back. Dad, Olivia replied. He works out of station number 3. He paused, then smiled and said, Well, why didn't you tell me that? It takes a special kind of man to be a fireman. I now know those stories about you are all nonsense. You're always welcome here. They offered to keep Evie overnight, but I explained she was due at her grandparents' for the weekend, which led to me having to explain the whole situation. The dance was a blast. There's nothing quite like dancing to oldies like Twist and Shout, all the Beach Boys songs, and early rock and roll. Some of the doo-wop songs were her favorites because her mother used to play them when she was growing up. I walked Olivia to her door. As we said goodnight, she leaned in and kissed me. Damon, I know it's early, but I'm interested when you're ready, she said, before saying goodnight. I got back to my parents' home just after 2 in the morning. Once again, Mom was waiting up. We talked about the night and how much I enjoyed it before I headed off to bed. The lawyers finalized the division of assets, and we put the house up for sale. Things were slowly moving forward. 3 months after the separation, things started to fall into place. The state medical board found Dr. Ronald Foster guilty of multiple violations of their ethics code, primarily altering medical records for personal gain. His attempt to ruin a man's life to steal his wife was taken very seriously. His medical license in the state was permanently revoked. Olivia called me when she heard the news, waking me from my sleep. I had just started back on night shifts and had only gotten about 2 hours of sleep. I was wide awake and too excited to go back to sleep. When I told my mom and dad the news, my mom was overjoyed. As I came out dressed up, my mom asked what's up. I told her I was going to ask the woman who stood by me these last few months if she'd like to go to lunch. Mom smiled and said, Don't you think it's time we met Olivia? I arrived at Chateau Nursing Home in Cape around noon, dressed semi-formally. The first person I saw was the receptionist who had lied to me months ago. Her face turned pale as I approached her counter inside the main entrance. Could you please contact Olivia Jones and let her know there's a gentleman here asking if she's available for lunch? I asked. I watched as she called Olivia's extension. A few minutes later, Olivia arrived wearing a big smile. After greeting her, I pulled her into my arms and kissed her. Hand in hand, we left and went to Logan's Roadhouse for lunch. You know we're now the talk of the town, Olivia said. Emma already found out from the receptionist, who's the queen of gossip. That's her problem. Now that I've been cleared, I'm moving forward, I replied. Besides, my new girlfriend might be getting tired of waiting for me to get moving. I must have said something right because Olivia's eyes welled up with tears. What was meant to be an hour lunch turned into 2.5. Later, I found out that after I dropped Olivia off, the receptionist told Emma how happy and in love we looked. Emma was about to discover trouble in her own paradise. The local CBS station reported the news during their early evening broadcast at 4 o'clock. It exposed how Dr. Ronald Foster and Emma Lee had conspired against me by falsifying medical records. Later that same week, the nursing board put Emma on probation for a year. Olivia followed policy and transferred Emma to the graveyard shift. Emma's relationship with Ronald became strained, especially when she found out she was pregnant. Ronald began looking for other job opportunities but found none. He eventually took a position as an orderly at the Lutheran Home for Veterans, working the graveyard shift. It was the final night shift of a 4-day stretch when I walked into the station and saw a congratulatory banner hanging up. They had brought someone in to cover my shift. Olivia, her son, and her parents were there, along with our captain. My parents and daughter were also present. I had just been promoted. The process had been delayed because of everything I had been through. This promotion meant no more swing shifts for me. I was now in a junior management position, working 5 days a week for 8 hours each day, with weekends off. During the party, I overheard Bill Jones telling the captain that if things went well, he might soon be my father-in-law. It took about 2 more weeks before we returned to see Judge McDonald. The terms of the settlement were approved, and my divorce was granted on grounds of adultery. Ronald Foster disappeared one night, leaving Emma alone and pregnant. On Labor Day weekend, about an hour before sunset, I took Olivia for a walk through a local state park. I had a little something planned that involved me getting down on one knee. She said yes, of course. Our families had organized a barbecue party on Monday afternoon at Olivia's house, and I had just finished grilling the hot dogs I liked. While serving them, Olivia's mother, Teresa, spotted the engagement ring and hugged her daughter. "When were you going to tell me?" Teresa asked. "After we finished eating," Olivia replied with a big grin. Bill noticed his wife's reaction and loudly asked her, "What's wrong?" Everyone stopped to listen. "Nothing, Bill. Olivia and Damon got engaged. They're getting married," Teresa announced. "We got married a week before Halloween. Emma is now allowed to see Evie when she is with her parents. What no one knows is that legally, my parents and I have regained my parental rights. Emma has to live with the fact that one of her bosses is now her ex-husband's wife. She's not a happy person."